Hi, my name is Keith Gellhorn. I'm the founder and CEO of Advocacy. We coach neurodiverse youth and adults living with ADHD, learning disabilities, autism, anxiety, and any co-occurring mental health challenge that impacts executive functioning, who are students in high school through post-secondary, as well as adults struggling in their careers and in entrepreneurship. Today, I'm here with Marlee Boyle from Sleep Culture. And we've done some work with you guys over the years. Sleep and ADHD seem to go hand in hand. And so instead of just passing referrals back and forth, thought it'd be good to bring you on today, Marlee, just to have a little chat about what you do. So can you tell us about yourself and why you got into the area of work that you're in?
Sure. Thanks, Keith. And just to go back to what you said, I think it's actually ADHD and lack of sleep that go together.
Yes, that's true.
So I'm a registered respiratory therapist, and I'm certified in clinical sleep health. And prior to founding Sleep Culture, I actually worked at a sleep disorder clinic for the better part of a decade. And it was really working in a clinic like that I recognized that a lot of people aren't getting exposure to this kind of information and this type of sleep coaching, if you will, unless they're diagnosed with a sleep disorder and they come through the doors of a sleep disorder clinic. So that's how the idea of Sleep Culture kind of got founded. So we are a sleep consulting and education company. I do sleep consulting, and then I have a clinical partner. She's a nurse. She also has a sleep background, and she does sleep consulting as well. So basically, I got into the sleep because I was working in the hospital, doing typical critical care, and really just couldn't handle the shift work. Really noticed that being sleep deprived or working when your brain wanted you to be sleeping was putting me at risk of making a mistake, and that was not ideal for me. I was worried about harming myself or a patient, or what kind of decisions I'd be able to make. Really noticing how that sleep deprivation was affecting my train of thought. And my ability to concentrate at work. So I actually got a day job working in a sleep clinic, which was a little bit backwards, but it was there that I really fell in love with how effective sleep can be just to get our mental health in order. And it really is the foundation of our health. So it's our baseline for everything. When we're not well rested, we can experience a lot of downfalls with our health, or even our mental health. So being able to see actually people heal and change and get their quality of life improved was so rewarding that's where I really fell in love with sleep therapy in general.
Awesome. So who do you serve? Who's your ideal client that you work with?
Great question. So anyone that is, having problems falling asleep, staying asleep, or is just generally unsatisfied with their sleep. So for the clients that I've worked with ADHD, it's very common to see they're more of a night owl. So it is common for people with diagnosed ADHD to also have this kind of tendency to be a night owl and have trouble getting up in the morning. And they often don't realize that there are certain things, habitual things we can do to really influence our circadian rhythm and influence our sleep-wake cycle to make it easier for just that 9-to-5 job that we're all kind of boxed into a lot of the time. And so using different tools, and I help coach them to develop a healthy bedtime routine and a morning routine that's really going to influence how easy it is to fall asleep at night and wake up earlier in the morning to kind of suit what they have to do for their day-to-day life. So it's about quality.
Can you tell us more about that circadian rhythm and just to simplify it for
Sure.
us non-techie, sciencey people?
Absolutely. So circadian rhythm is basically our biological clock. So we all have these clocks in all our cells in our bodies. And the circadian rhythm basically is our tendency to what time to go to sleep and what time to wake up. It can also influence things like our digestion. So if you wake up super early in the morning and you don't feel hungry yet, that's because your circadian rhythm hasn't really caught up to you being awake yet. and woken up your digestive system. So circadian rhythm is basically a clock. And it's our tendency of what time to fall asleep and what time we want to naturally wake up. And it is very common to see with ADHD, this delay in that. So the tendency to not be able to fall asleep until late, and then a tendency to sleep late. And, that doesn't always fit in with our societal norm of 9 to 5 kind of jobs. And then they get labeled with like, they're sleeping in, they're lazy, things like that. And it has a lot more to do with their condition than it's not a willpower thing or a choice. Their bodies, their clock is literally delayed. So there are certain things that I work with them to do to kind of move that clock to be more in sync with what they have to do in the daytime.
Okay, so can you give me an example of kind of a typical sleep routine, what that might look like? Because I do know, most people are just kind of all over the place with how they sleep. So
Absolutely. I mean, one of the first things that we talk about too often with is stimulant medication. So are you taking it at bedtime? That's probably not going to help you. So just reviewing the timing of the medication can be helpful on its own, but then developing a bedtime routine with them. So in conjunction with the client, because if I'm giving them a bunch of activities to do and they're thinking in their head, I am never going to do that. It's a waste of time. So I always work with what they're currently doing to adapt a bedtime routine that's not a huge change, but just more sleep friendly. And the whole purpose behind this bedtime routine is actually to get that release of melatonin. So our melatonin is what makes us feel sleepy and goes to sleep at night. With ADHD, we see a delay in that onset of melatonin production. So we do a couple of things with our bedtime routine to kind of manipulate our melatonin production to get it producing earlier. So such things as we'll talk about lighting. So light is actually a really strong determinant of whether we're awake or asleep and the timing of being awake and asleep. So even just dimming the lights in the evening a little bit earlier to give your brain that signal, okay, it's nighttime. Let's use some external factors to trigger our brain to know that the timing is supposed to be moved a little earlier. So dimming the lights can get our melatonin to start producing, because melatonin is also known as the hormone of darkness. So we need it to be dark. And then manipulating body temperature as well to signal that our melatonin production can start a little earlier as well. So things like regulating our body temperature through hot baths and hot showers with certain timings can really start to give our body some external cues, because if your internal biological clock is saying, no, 2 a.m. is my bedtime, but you want to be in bed by 10:30, 11, we have to use external signals to tell our body what time it is and to get to bed a little earlier.
Okay. So would that equate to, I use a very non-scientific way of explaining sleep, which is part of the reason I start referring people to you, but I always compare it like, when you're 20 years old and you go out to the bar, for example, right? And you can go out and pull an all-nighter, and then the next day you can probably pull an all-nighter, but then you typically would need, 12, 13 hours of sleep. But if we're never sleeping, or that's why everybody asks me, like, are your eyes even open, right? Because I do have a sleep disorder. Is that like, what's the impact of that cycle if you keep it going? Does it lead to, like, how does it impact, I guess, mental health and just overall well-being?
Yeah, great question. So that cumulative sleep debt, we call it. So, when you're shorting on sleep, so maybe you get 5 hours one night, 3 hours the next, even if you get, a solid 8-hour sleep the next night, you're not catching up. So, and it is really common for folks with ADHD to have a sleep deficit. So not only do they not sleep at the regular bedtime and wake time, but there's also a shorter sleep duration as well that can happen. And that leads to sleep debt. So sleep debt, or long-term sleep deprivation, or little chunks out of our sleep, really can start to impact our performance throughout the day and our function, particularly what might be, especially important to folks with ADHD is our executive function is actually the first thing that's affected by sleep deprivation. So our ability to concentrate, focus, learn, and like even make plans and execute plans can really be impaired by sleep deprivation. And it's probably the part of our brain that's affected the most by sleep deprivation is our executive function. Aside from that, if you've ever felt, and it's common also with ADHD, is to have some anxiety or depression as well. you've ever felt anxious or depressed, your sleep gets really thrown off. And when your sleep gets thrown off, so it's a bi-directional relationship: poor sleep, poor mental health, poor mental health, poor sleep. So it does go back and forth. And that's where that having those tools, so having some tools in your back pocket to kind of protect your sleep, even in moments of, we're all going to have stress in our lives, but even through those particularly stressful times, to have those tools to have better sleep, or to keep your sleep on track, and keep those kind of those functions that our brain has to go through every single night, that restorative function for our brains and our bodies. So important to how our mental health and our physical health is. So there are, long-term health risks aside from mental health risks with sleep deprivation as well. So when our bodies get broken down all day and they don't get to go through that repair process and as much repair as we actually need, we see things like high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease is definitely up there. Poor mental health, and even some cancers are linked to sleep deprivation now, and even long-term risks of like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, because our brains go through that clearing process when in our deep sleep that cleans out those plaques and things like that are associated with dementias and Alzheimer's. So lots of long-term health effects from having poor sleep and chronic sleep deprivation, but certainly mental health is one of them. I mean, you can feel it within 24 hours. They say like even one all-nighter can lead to a 34% surge in emotional stress the next day. So
Wow.
that's pretty significant. Yeah.
significant for our students, right? All the major procrastinators who are doing things last minute. And
yes.
then what's the result of an all-nighter?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And the research is showing too that an all-nighter is almost useless for learning. Our brains are able to consolidate. Yeah, we can't remember anything I'll walk into the kitchen and be like, what did I come in here for if I'm just skipping a couple hours of sleep? So definitely more common with full sleep deprivation.
Awesome. So how would people go about contacting you if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, so you can contact me through my website. Very easy. It's just www.sleepcultureco.com, and we have it right on the website. It says book services, and we do free 15-minute consultations. So even if you're not sure, is this a service that could benefit me, book the free 15-minute consultation, and we'll have a chat and see if your sleep issue is something that we can work with for sure. And we also have a discount code for any of your clients, Keith. So it's just advocacy 15 if they want to get 15% off the hour consultation as well.
Awesome. One last question. Is it covered through healthcare?
So it's dependent on each plan. It is a fairly new service. Right. Believe it or not, sleep is kind of a new concept in our healthcare system, which is wild because we've been sleeping since the beginning of human existence.
Right.
But it is a fairly new service. So there are some health benefit companies that are covering sleep help. Mostly would be under the health accounts, generally for we're seeing coverage. But yeah, but we never want cost to be the barrier to someone to getting sleep help. We have other routes to take. We do group seminars that are for free and things like that as well. So it's always worthwhile to look into your sleep and reach out for that help, because chances are if you can't pay out of pocket, there is a way we'll get the service to you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and hopefully we'll be sending lots of clients your way.
Looking forward to it, Keith.